Okay, we've now entered neo-feudalism officially with the election of Drumpf and the success of the corporate state indoctrination. And so essentially, the embargo against China with the proposed 60% tariffs on Chinese imports will be considered a violation of the World Trade Organization. So that will justify China to boycott the U.S. agricultural exports, just like happened last time when Drumpf had to pay $30 billion to the U.S. Farmers because China was no longer buying the soybeans and corn. But since China's not stupid, they've been planning for this, so they've already diversified their agricultural imports more, so they're not dependent on U.S. farm imports, and they've stopped buying any new Treasury bonds. So China's been just waiting for their current Treasury bonds to age out, to mature. But China still they own 10% of US debt. And because the pandemic increased the debt spending along with the tax cuts, increasing the US debt deficit, so the previous Drumpf regime had increased the U.S. debt by something like 7 trillion or 4 trillion. It's going to be another 7 trillion at least. That's the projection. The current projection is going to be just under $8 trillion. But it could be a lot worse because China can just they can just sell off their U.S. Treasury bonds and thereby tank the value of the U.S. petrodollar. And of course, this is the plan for the BRICS alternative to the U.S. global empire, which is the petrodollar. So already, like India and Russia are using a different currency for trading than the dollar. They'll use like a United Arab Emirates currency or something. I don't know what currency they're using, but basically, it's the whole goal of the BRICS is to move the economy from not being dependent on the U.S. for the dollar for trading. And so the neo-feudalism will then, as Michael E. Hudson explains, it will collapse the growth of the U.S. economy and increase the disparity of wealth. So right after Drumpf got elected, the U.S. bank stocks soared like 20% because they know there's not going to be any more regulations on antitrust. There won't be any more regulations on deposit minimums for either domestic loans or global loans, international loans. So for those three factors, basically the financial sector, the private financial sector will be able to increase their predatory loans, but the U.S. government itself is going to collapse. And so this means that the Drumpf administration is then planning on basically gutting the U.S. government, so that the Project 2025 would then gut any kind of regulations for safety and the environment, and then go to increase extraction of resources to try to, basically like Russia does, just try to sell off, privatize the um, resources for the private oligarchs. And since there's no more regulations, and the disparity of wealth will increase. And then if there's any problems, then just like fascism works, the poor will get attacked, and then first it'll be the immigrants, and then it'll be anybody who complains about their slave wage situation, the so-called vermin. Um, so anybody who lives like a vermin, which would be the poor, will then be killed off, and their resources will then be transferred to the wealthy. So it's basically what Nazi Germany did. And it's going to be the Dark Ages again for the U.S. And then, meanwhile, China will then become dominant as the global power for a new Chinese empire, because they've already been establishing the financial, their own World Bank, and they've been taking over economies all over the world, like whether it's Ecuador or in Africa, just doing trading and investments, and so they've already been starting to wean themselves from dependence on U.S. exports to the U.S. So this will be the final blow to the U.S. empire, and the private elite will be able to thrive from this collapse of the U.S. empire, while the middle class will get totally wiped out, what's left of it. And how did it happen? It's because the corporate media has just basically been promoting Drumpf the whole time, because it's like they don't provide any real alternative, and people feed on the anger. Everybody loves to be angry and feels self-righteous about voting for some kind of alternative or whatever, without realizing they're just voting to give all their money to the elite, because, cancel taxes for the elite and get rid of all the regulations for the elite is basically just type of welfare for the elite, because they're gonna maintain the military contracts, which is the main form of corporate welfare for the elite. And so the prison industry stocks have soared, because they're like, okay, well, we're going to have concentration camps to put in imprison the poor. And basically that's how the U.S. works. If you're poor, then you're considered, you can be targeted for you must be mentally unstable or something, because since you're poor, they have the Darwinian fascism mentality, where the might is right. So if you're a thug and you control the wealth, then you must be smart and that kind of thing. And so it's just gonna collapse the U.S. economy, because without a strong middle class, then there's not enough demand. So they already saw that happen from the pandemic, where the middle class started buying more from Walmart and lower priced big box stores instead of higher end stores, and it's just gonna, like the demand for the food shelves just kept increasing, and the food stamps, of course, doubled over the pandemic, but that hasn't really gone away. And so you'll have the middle class just get totally wiped out, and you'll have you'll have trillionaires. There's going to be, Elon Musk will become a trillionaire, and Bezos and the Facebook guy who was so impressed by Drumpf raising his arm after he got his pump shoes put back on, his 3-inch support platform shoes, and the glass shard that nicked his ear. People eat that stuff up. The Zuckerberg fist pump and the Joe Rogan bro vote for fascism. So that's basically what it's come to. And it's not, you can't blame people for being brainwashed, because the corporate media is just like constantly bombarding people with idiotic, fluffy, talking about fluffy stuff, or just ignoring the fact that the U.S. is a military empire has all these military CEO contractors making $30 million a year from tax welfare. So that's about it.